Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Build. This is episode 1.10, and today we'll be discussing the topic build in time for failure. Trust me. We're going to be featuring innovation, failure, time, and me. Before we do go on to the full version of this particular talk today, I just wanted to quickly point out something funny, which is when I was looking for the color I wanted to have as my main theme for this particular talk, I searched for the term the color of failure, and this particular hex code came up called failed. So it was a win for me, but super funny. So who am I? My name is Brittany Hernandez, and my friend Emily calls me the bee emoji or bee, and my uncle and my dad call me Peanut and Brittle. I am from San Diego, California, but I currently live in London. And I came here for a master's degree after serving in the United States Coast Guard for 4 years, as well as becoming a lawyer, going to law school, and working for myself with Cormayam Law while I was doing my master's degree, and helping different clients who are directors, producers, composers, and so on with their intellectual property and entertainment law matters out of California. So as I mentioned, I have a master's degree with distinction in international film business. I went on after that to serve as the business development executive and partner engagement executive at Vala. I then became a Gavel expert. So I went into the hybrid no-code, low-code space and worked specifically with a company called GigLaw, automating documents and creating legal applications and products for other lawyers. I did really well at that and gained a little bit of recognition within the Gavel team, who invited me to become the global ambassador to law schools, which is my favorite role. It's so fun to get to work with the young minds and the students at the different law schools across the globe. That role made it to where I was able to come up with the idea for the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship Program, of which I'm the program director and senior instructor. We're currently in week 8. We just kicked off week 8 out of 12 for the certification course. We're going to take a 2-week break after that, and then we're going to have the hackathon competition where the students can win $1,000 prizes. There's 3 of those. There's a swag prize. It's going to be awesome. So I'm really excited for that. I'm also the creator and host of the Lightning Talks for Legal Innovators series in partnership with Gavel, as well as this series called Wednesday Build. And I'm the creator of the first free interactive digital magazine built on Gavel called Code Word Hex. I'm also the founder, course creator, and senior instructor for Cormayam Academy, where we have Gavel certification courses, a certification course on Go Full Page, courses in software and Airtable, and more. I'm also the founder of Cormayam Retreats, where once a year I host a 5 to 6 day retreat somewhere in the world that's beautiful with other female entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their businesses and connect with each other. So enough about me, let's get into today's topic. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the importance of building in time for failure, especially when you're somebody who's doing a lot of creative or innovative projects where there's not really some defined scope of this particular project. So in my particular case or example, I build tools or applications with no-code platforms such as Gavel, Softer, Airtable, and more. And within that space, and even outside of that space, when you're talking about like anything that's creative, or you're building something that hasn't existed before, or you're creating some variation on something that exists, and you're trying to bend the tool in half and figure things out, and come up with the idea initially at all, it's gonna take some time to develop that. Not a lot of time, because you like to iterate quickly and you like to launch things quickly, and a no-code kind of allows you to do that. But you need to build in some time, at least some lead time for failure, and also giving yourself deadlines so that you can push to that particular deadline. And kind of that forces you to eliminate parts of your build, so that you focus on the minimum viable product first and then iterate from there. So we're going to talk about a little bit about innovation generally, a bit about failure, and then a bit about time and how you can structure your time to consider things like failure. So let's first talk about innovation. So obviously in broader terms, we're just talking about things, like I said, that have either you're innovating, meaning that you are building something either that has never existed before, you're coming up with a concept that iterates on something that has already been built before by somebody else or from yourself. There's lots of different kind of definitions for innovations, but we're going to kind of talk about this from the standpoint of coming up with something new or a variation on something that exists that looks at the problem or solves the problem in a new way. Whenever you're doing that, there's going to be limitations that are either within your control or outside of your control that will make it to where you need some extra lead time to work through the kinks of that innovative thing that you're doing or your creative project. So in my case, a lot of the time what's happening is what happens in my head is that I understand the tool really, really well. So much so that I can predict how something hypothetically might work. And then I build with that hypothetical in mind, which can be really good because it pushes me to create things that I think are very interesting and that kind of push the limits of a tool, such as Gavel, for example, as shown here. However, what happens sometimes is either I think something happened and it doesn't quite function the way that I want it to, not meaning that I projected incorrectly, but maybe the thought was kind of better than the reality. The other thing might be that I build something and it's not actually very useful. Like it doesn't solve the problem. Maybe there's a better way to solve it. So I need to scrap the idea entirely and start something new, which means I need time to scrap something. And then also sometimes the hypothetical in my head actually is a little bit surpasses the current capabilities of a tool. So what that means is I will assume that something is possible because of the different available features and how I'm conceptualizing how they might fit together, but the actual capacity of the tool might be limited in some technical way. So with all that being said, whenever you're creating something new or iterating on something that already exists, either somebody else's tool or your own or solution, however you'd like to define that, is this idea of needing some lead time for failure. So a lot of what I'm doing right now has to do with content creation, for example, where I'm coming up with a curated curriculum for the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship. At the same time, I'm also running this particular show, the Wednesday Build. I'm also simultaneously running the Code Word Hex magazine, where I produce content weekly as well, at the same time as producing content and running and hosting the Lightning Talks for Legal Innovators in partnership with Gavel, at the same time as sort of like trying to survive and make my businesses run. So with all that being said, is I'm constantly also trying to make TikTok videos and sort of other social media content that makes it to where people are aware of what we're building and how we're using this tool and how it can change people's lives. So with that being said, there's a lot of content creation that I need to generate throughout the week. And I, especially with the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship, I really have to make sure that I give myself lead time to fail, because I'm trying to curate a very unique and specific type of experience for the students within a very defined time frame. So what that means and what it looks like is that I need to test something before I teach it. So even though I know how to do something technically, having to find out how to best package that for a group of students can be really challenging. So what I generally do and have been doing, and I'm not perfect at it, I will admit, and I do have those days where I'm cutting it very, very close. But what I'm trying to do is actually get most of the content filmed. We do a live session on Wednesday, and I release the course material every Wednesday, and give them their assignment that day as well. But I'm building it in a really lean style, which means that the content isn't all pre-recorded for all 12 weeks in advance. I'm building it as we're going along and adapting to what I see and responding to what's happening within our cohort. So if I see that we need a little bit extra time spent talking about a particular topic, then I will pivot a little bit and adjust the content a little bit to respond to the needs of this particular cohort, but also making sure that the overall strategy for the course is still accomplished and that I've prepared them in all of these different tools for life in the real world after law school. So this challenge has been interesting because building it lean like this, where I build it 1 week at a time, makes it to where I really have to be super disciplined about my schedule and building in that lead time to experiment and to adjust to the feedback that I'm seeing or receiving from the cohort, and seeing and adjusting to what their needs are as they submit their assignments, and where people keep struggling, or multiple students or fellows are having the same issue, which means that I haven't taught it in a way that they've been able to receive. So that's been really interesting for me as well. So the reason I wanted to bring this up was to also point out that this is kind of what the course looks like that we're working on, to kind of give you a sense of what I'm talking about here, where we have, it's broken up into 12 weeks for the certification course. Then we take a break, then we do a hackathon competition. But each week is kind of moving us through sort of a 7-part framework where we're basically building our, we use several different tools. So in the first part, we're building with Softr, and we're building a, not everyone's looks like this. This is just a demonstration, but we are building our own personal builder websites. We're also building an interactive resume using Gabble, which makes it to where someone can interact with our education, our experience, our certifications. They can get a customized PDF version of the cover letter and resume. They can expand to see a video of how the person created it. If they say no, they just get sent to thank you, and they're sent on the loop to go back to this particular page. I've taught them how to create a different form and how to have a video embedded, and so many different things. But my goal is to kind of have this foundation, move them through the process of creating a smaller type of workflow, then building them up to build a more complex workflow, then building them up to have enough basis of knowledge to create their own applications without me telling them what to do every step of the way to build that thing, to take the fundamentals that we've learned together and apply it in their with their own ideas. So that's just to say that this process of working through and creating a project like this or a course like this, where we are building one building block at a time. And since they're in law school, I have the unique challenge of only giving them about 2 or so hours of content to work through per week. And that's inclusive of the live, because they have so many different things going on. And I want them to be able to get through the course and understand what to do and how to kind of really be successful in creating different workflows, learning how to create apps, and being able to produce things that actually provide a solution for the access to justice gap. So with all of that being said, as I'm building this course lean throughout these 12 weeks and throughout the hackathon, I, as the instructor, need to be hyper aware of the needs of the students, as well as my own needs as a content creator as I create the course material, because I'm creating this from scratch and kind of moving them through this process of going through each part of creating different types of builds. So far, we've already built a website like this with all of these different kind of buttons and forms and everything. They've created their customer relationship management software system using HubSpot. they've created this interactive resume that we kind of just went through, where there's a preview of they can give their information, they get a preview of a document that gets output at the end, and so on and so on. We've also created if we come here, for example, a pro bono limited scope engagement agreement workflow, which everyone just finished this past week. So they run through this process, and at the end, the client can sign the agreement with all these different kind of special things along the way. So with that being said, I had to come up with the idea for obviously our assignments. I need to have some time to grade the assignments. I also need time to film and also fail in filming, which is something that I didn't really consider before. So what I've noticed about myself when I go to film for the course is that I need several takes of the initial sentence. And then once I kind of get the first sentence going, I'm like, okay, just run with it and do the full take. So I had to learn that about myself and understand that I need to start filming for the Wednesday launch. At least half of it needs to be done by Monday, or else I'm not going to be on track. And also because I need enough time to contact support if any technical issues are going on, to kind of test how things might fit together, to scrap things and start anew. So that's where this kind of idea of building in time for failure comes from, which is my own experience of trying to build out this course at the same time as having a million other things going on. But understanding that there needs to be time for me to experiment. This also doesn't only extend to my Law Students in Legal Tech Fellowship, but also into the sort of builds that I create for fun, as well as builds that I create for actual solutions. Just to sort of have, like I said, some time to experiment. The kind of thing that I was saying about a hypothetical sort of something could hypothetically work because of the type of features that are involved, but that the tool itself isn't physically sort of created to do that yet, was something that I had created where I was using some advanced invisible logic and trying to make it to where a particular variable was able to do something it's not possible to do yet. So it's just something that I think is really important to think about when you are doing something super, super innovative, not super, super innovative, like I'm not solving like world hunger with a workflow or something, but maybe somebody else could. But with the things that I'm building, I'm trying to push the limits of a tool and to try new things that I haven't seen before, such as creating escape rooms with this tool, creating digital magazines with this tool, creating daily journals and case notes and class briefs that pushes through Zapier into Notion and creates a new calendar entry and things like that. So when you're trying to, especially with the particular case of the case brief and class notes where it links to Notion, I also needed to build in time to refer to somebody who might be able to help me. I usually build by myself, and the people that I go to for help are usually Gabble themselves. So I'll usually contact the help or support team and just say like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this particular thing. Do you have some recommendation for how I can do this? But I don't generally reach out to people outside of the team that much. However, there was one time where when I was working on the case briefs and class notes one, I think I had reached out to the team, but it's kind of like a very specific type of question that I was asking. And it was actually better for me to refer to my brother, who is a full stack developer. And it's not that we were doing something that required coding. It's just that it required me to talk it out with someone who was asking the right types of questions, a bit like a mentor would. So he's my older brother and he is super brilliant. And I just kind of was talking to him about like Zapier, and I was talking to him about webhooks. I was like, I want to know how to create a webhook because I think I need to do this thing with Notion. And he was saying like, well, what are you trying to do? Because maybe you don't need a webhook. Maybe you just need something else. So just even the question of like, well, what are you trying to do helped me to then ultimately both of us were able together to figure out how to push the information that we wanted to in the way that we wanted to into Notion. So with that being said, I needed to build in the time to actually have the conversation for us to troubleshoot and to try to like, not to troubleshoot, it's not really about a trouble or like a problem solving. It's more about experimenting. It's more about being curious about how might something work if I tried it like this? How might something work if I try it like that? What if we do this? So it's really more a conversation and experimentation practice than troubleshooting or problem solving. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit more about how I build in time for failure. So far, as I said, I'm not perfect about this. So we've talked a little bit about innovation, which is the idea that we're creating something brand new that's never existed before, or iterating on something that somebody else has created or that you created in the past and you wanted to kind of improve. And how that requires time for experimentation. And let's talk a little bit about failure. So I love to fail because it allows me to move on quicker to the correct solution. So I think that this is a mindset thing where I do get frustrated. I'm not some kind of saint or something, but I do feel like the faster that you can hit all of the dead ends, the faster you can find the road that you can keep going on and know it's the sure road that's going to lead you to your destination. My mom, when I was dating a lot before I met my partner and my fiance, she would always say, you need to get through all of the no's to get to the one yes. And I just like that idea that it's like, yes, you're right. Like, I know that this is a dead end. I know that this is a dead end. And finally, once I've gone through all of those, I can see where I need to go. Obviously, it would be better if you could just find the one at the first try. But that process of kind of going through gives you more surety along the way, and you get some more learning and understanding as you fail along the way through that process of experimentation. So when we talk about failure, we're really talking about finding all of the dead ends and experimenting with lots of different types of processes that may work. And you're exercising your mind and challenging your mind to try new things, which is always good. So, so that's just a little bit about failure. Now let's move this conversation towards a conversation around time. So I say time is a little bit of an inside joke between me and my partner, where we watched a movie and somebody in the movie said like time. So now whenever we say time, we must say it 3 times, of course. So when we talk about time and structuring your time, this is where I want to spend the most time, I think, in this conversation, which is how you set up your schedule. If you don't already have this tool, you really need to get Calendly. I'm sure many people who are on this call or who are watching this recording have this tool already. But if you don't, what it does is it allows you to create different types of events. In this case, there's a 1-hour booking time, a 30-minute booking time. You can add a paywall. So when somebody like books with you, let's say clients or something, they can pay before they book. And that gets sent to your Stripe account, I believe. It looks like this when you send somebody your calendar and they can choose a time to meet with you. And what I want you to notice and take away from this particular one, which is mine, is that I'm not available on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for meetings. I'm only available for meetings, external meetings, and internal now on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And there is a very specific reason for this, which is I need time to fail. And I also just need time to work. I feel like it's so interesting to me when people's calendars are like completely wide open to have someone just drop a time on your calendar just at any point in the week. I completely think that that is the wrong approach. And you must, in my opinion, push all of your meetings to 2 to 3 days max on your calendar. Those are the days you're available, and be really strict about it if possible. There's only like very few exceptions that I'll make for this. If it's emergency, obviously, there are very few emergencies in my world now, by design, because I had a very stressful position in the United States Coast Guard where real emergencies, actual emergencies happened, where people's lives were at stake. It's quite stressful. And so now my life of no code, maybe there's an emergency where something goes down, but nobody will like actually die if something goes wrong with technically wrong with a tool or something. Like, it will be okay eventually. Maybe there will be a financial loss of some kind, maybe there'll be a reputational loss of some kind, and those are real damages and those are real consequences, but nobody will actually die. So if it's not an emergency, I do not take meetings on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If it's the case that there is an opportunity for me to let's say like go to a conference or to participate on a podcast, for example, or something like that, and it's not on my off day where I wouldn't necessarily be doing something like that, I do make exceptions just so that I can continue to like grow the business and expand my reach and everything, but it's very few and far between that I'll do that. So also, if there's like a class that I need to give a workshop for that their class is only on Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays or something like that, I will make exceptions. So it's not a hard and fast rule in the sense that I would absolutely like never take a meeting on those days, but I wouldn't take a meeting that doesn't have a good reason to be on one of my off days. And the off days are not really off. They're like my big horse, like working days. And so what actually happens is the way that I have this set up in Calendly, you can do this by creating some availability rules. So under availability, you can set your working hours, and you can have your working hours be applied to all of your different event types, or you can have different schedules. As you can see here, you can make a new schedule. Mine is just the default working hours. And then I just say that I'm available. I actually also have to consider time differences because I live in London. A lot of people I talk to and work with and meet with live in the US, and both on East Coast and West Coast time. So I do go till about 7 p.m. for meetings, just so I can catch the morning time of people in the US, especially on the West Coast or in Alaska. But I don't start meeting until 10:30. And the reason for that is I do a lot of I do a golden hour in the morning, and then I do some exercise, I take a shower and like get my hair done, like do my hair and makeup and all that stuff, eat breakfast. And I want like a moment to settle in before I start talking to other people on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Thursdays, actually, I don't start taking meetings until 2:30. The reason for this is because my Wednesdays are extremely hard because I have a really packed schedule on Wednesdays, and I have to make sure that certain things happen. It doesn't look like it on here for Wednesdays, but all of this time, and the reason it's not available is I'm making sure that everything is good to go for this show, the Wednesday Build, and also for the Law Students and Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship Program, where I have to make sure that all of their assignments are working properly, that all of the recordings are working properly, and all the audio is working. I have to make sure all of their assignments are submitted back to them, their feedback is submitted back to them by this time, and also to just make sure that their new assignments are assigned to them as well. With that being said, that's why I don't take meetings on Thursday mornings, is because I'm completely shattered after a Wednesday. So I think one of the main parts about this like failure and lead time should also consider energy management, which could be a whole session all on its own, which is managing and understanding your energy levels throughout the day and throughout the week, depending on your schedule, and trying to actually automate and repeat as much as possible in your schedule, so that you can predict and work around those particular things. So that's why you see so much orange on my schedule. It's because I want the blank spaces to be actual free time. So what you'll see is in my schedule, I have it built in for all the time that I'm generally sleeping. This is like a meditation time in the morning for 10 minutes when I have time to like go to the bathroom and get dressed. Golden hour is 1 hour of work before everything chaotically goes as the day will go, when most people are sleeping, or I can catch the very end of the evening for people in California. So I generally will, I don't do a lot of checking emails or messages during this time because I really try to protect that hour to be the thing that, this could be an experimentation time, but it really needs to be like the most important thing that needs to happen that day. Because if by 9 a.m. somebody says there's some emergency that's going to divert my attention for the rest of the day, at least I got 1 hour of work in on the most important thing that needed to happen that day. Then I spend an hour to exercise and meditate again. Then I take 2 hours to shower, eat breakfast, get ready, like just kind of reset my space. Then I will have 2 hours of a work block from 10 to 12. I'll take a lunch. I've built in time for an education hour, which I haven't been able to use as much lately, but I want to keep that time kind of reserved for that. Then I would have, so that's like if I want to take a course, that's the only time really in the week that I've been able to find that might work, which I'm still experimenting with. And then after that education hour, I do another block of time where I will do some work and then take any meetings as needed. I used to have one internal meeting with my assistant on Mondays, but we both mutually agreed to move that to Tuesdays because it worked out better for me to have a full day where I could film for the fellowship program, and to experiment. And so that change has actually been really, really helpful for me, because even if it's a short meeting, it still makes it to where I have to context switch. So I want to talk a little bit about context switching. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let me just see if I can find a good article for this. Context switching is destroying your workday. That's quite the title. Let's just look at this one for a second. So context switching is destroying your workday. Here's how to fix it. So what is context switching? This is really what we're looking for here. Context switching is our tendency to shift from one unrelated task to another. According to the American Psychological Association, switching refers to the change in our mental control settings when we move to a new task, etc., etc. The term was originally used in computing to describe the switching of the CPU from one state of a process to another. Computers struggled when they switched tasks, incurring a context switch cost. Today, we use multitasking and context switching to speak about human behaviors. So if we go down, the problem with it is that it creates problems at work because we're rarely ever able to focus on just one task the entire day, etc., etc. So what I like to think of is not necessarily to completely avoid context switching altogether. It's more about strategic context switching. So that for me is around, like we talked about, energy management and building in time for failure, because I need to know that on Mondays, I'm going to have a full, clear day available to try and to fail, and that I don't have to switch out of that mode and into sort of meeting, talking to other people mode. I can stay in this very internal environment where on Mondays, I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just focused on figuring out how to get everyone set up on Wednesday. Then on Tuesdays, I just feel like I would prefer to never take meetings, honestly, even though I'm quite an outgoing person generally, and I love people. I like working and I like building things. So I would prefer to have a lot of quiet, alone time to think and try things and create and experiment and fail and succeed. So it's really hard for me to context switch into talking to other human beings while I'm in the mode of thinking about something, some kind of problem or something like that. So to be honest, I would prefer to not take meetings ever, But because I recognize the need for meetings in some cases, I dedicate Tuesdays and Thursdays to those networking calls, meetings relating to work, anything relating to if students need anything, or to talking to my assistant and getting her set up for the week, taking meetings with law schools, actually doing different workshops. I do the lives on Wednesdays because I think it's the best day in the week to sort of like in the middle, sort of sandwich everything into the middle to kind of film live and then post on Thursdays and Fridays and kind of catch up. But Mondays and Fridays are super sacred time of like not taking meetings. So if anything, if it's possible at all for you to protect at least one, but better two or more, maybe three, like I do, days where you are not available and you're focused on being able to build in time to try things and to fail and to actually do them, I think that would be really valuable. I actually kind of was introduced to this concept of context switching and blocking out days of like no meeting days from my academic supervisor on my dissertation at my master's degree. And also she later became my boss at Vala. Kate, she does this actually. So she will block out a full Monday and Friday of no meeting days. And she'll take them, like I said, in emergencies. But for the most part, those are days where she doesn't have internal or external meetings. And I really, really liked that. I thought that was really smart. And that's when I started to build that into my schedule. So if you can control your schedule as much as possible to build in this time to fail, I think it will really, really benefit you in the long run. And remembering that when I'm talking about context switching, that switching between sort of different tasks and changing your mindset, this really does help when you have those days blocked out for time to fail and to time to try new things, to experiment and to be curious and to let things settle in. So one of the things is it's kind of, this goes to this book that I always like to reference and really love, which is called Your Creative Brain. So this is by Dr. Shelley Carson. So she kind of talks about this notion that there are, it's called the Creates Brain Sets model. And I've mentioned this on the Wednesday build before, but I'll just kind of bring it up quickly here. So it's called the Creates Brain Sets model. Dr. Shelley Carson. Yeah, so this one here. So let's just look at this description really quickly. So it says the Creates Brain Sets model is a set of 7 brain activation states or brain sets that have relevance to the creative process. So this is a really, really good model, I think, for creativity, and it's one that I highly recommend. The book is really, really good. It's also available on Audible, which is how I was actually reading it, but I bought the hardcover as well. So basically the Creates Brain Sets model kind of goes over, it spells creates. So it's connect, reason, envision, absorb, transform, evaluate, and stream. So these are all different states of your brain during the day, week, month, year, etc., as you're sort of like doing a different task or creating something new. So so it says basically that each brain set has the potential to influence how you think, approach problems, and perceive the world. So when we talk about, let's look at each one a little bit in turn, not too much on each one, but for the connect brain set, for example, you enter a defocused state of attention that allows you to see the connections between objects or concepts that are quite disparate in nature. You're able to generate multiple solutions to a given problem rather than focusing on a single solution. The ability to generate multiple solutions is combined with an upswing in positive emotion that also provides incentive and motivation to keep you interested in your creative project. So that's a really important brain set to to tap into, as well as the absorb one. I think this one's really good as well. And I spend a lot of time in here. When you access the absorb brain set, you open your mind to new experiences and ideas. You uncritically view your world and take in knowledge. Everything fascinates you and attracts your attention. So, but you can't spend too much time here because you need to be able to eventually go into the envision, reason, transform, evaluate, and stream processes. So these are just kind of like different states of mind that you need to build in time for in order to innovate and to spend time failing, which is part of this creative process. So if we talk about stream, for example, your thoughts and actions begin to flow in a steady, harmonious sequence, almost as if they were orchestrated by outside forces. The stream brain set is associated with the production of creative material, such as jazz improvisation, narrative writing, as in novels or short stories, sculpting or painting, and the step-by-step revelation of scientific discovery. So these are just, as I mentioned, different brain sets that you need to consider and build in time for in your schedule, which you can do by creating a controlled calendar and understanding the costs of context switching. So I think one of the things that was mentioned like in several different sources is how many minutes context switching costs you. I think it's like, I want to say 7 minutes of time. Let me just see if we can find this source really quick. Context switching cost. Okay, so this is a good one. So the true cost in time and productivity. On average, people take 9.5 minutes to get back into a productive workflow after switching between digital apps. So 9.5 minutes on average is a lot of time lost in a day, especially if you're constantly, oh, are we in the same article? Oh, cool. Or at least by the same people. Well, maybe not. Well, either way, the point is that you can see that there is definitely a cost to context switching, and it takes time to get back into your particular mindset of what you were doing before. So as we look at my schedule, for example, you can see that I have my time blocks set out in a way that I can see blank space where I can actually work. So I can see when I have my meetings, I can see when I have sort of things that repeat. And like I said, I purposely try to not have too many meetings, even though I love everyone and I love meeting people and I love talking to people. I really do love to have a lot of white space on my calendar in order to use that time to think, to get into this mindset and the brain set where I can just connect, make connections, figure out how something could work, imagine or envision how I might solve a problem in some way, how I might be able to translate a message to the fellows, for example, or different ways to connect, how I might be able to make a TikTok video that is both funny and educational at the same time as producing content or new courses or coming up with a new business model for how we might generate more revenue for Chromium Academy or whatever the case may be. There just needs to be some white space on your calendar and some dedicated days to failing. So I think that that is kind of the main point of today's talk, which is going to be a little bit shorter overall, is just to really bring home the point that the more you can control, obviously you can't control everything, but I think you can control a little bit, which is especially if you're a founder or an entrepreneur where you are self-employed, you're your own boss and you make your own schedule and you choose when other people kind of meet with you. And you can be the first one to offer your calendar, then people have to choose from your dates that you're available. And also in reverse, if somebody gives you their calendar, you can say, I'm only available to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays or Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, or whatever the case may be. If you really think about how much time you actually have from a working perspective, both from an actual physical amount of time, And from an energy management perspective, it's not that much. So I don't like to fill that with a lot of things where I'm not actually producing something that will lead to actually like promoting or pushing forward my different projects and initiatives. So whatever the case may be, I would highly recommend that you block out certain days where you are not available to meet with anyone, and you stick to it as closely as you can, and except for obviously emergency situations, or if there's a very, very strong, good opportunity that would propel you and lead to more business in the future. But any type of networking meetings or sort of repeated internal meetings of that any type of nature, I think can be more controlled if you choose which days those can be. In my case, Tuesdays and Thursdays, where my time for failure and experimentation, working and filming are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Do you remember the Create Brain Set model? You can definitely look into this more, and this is such a treasure trove of information that you can just really tap into. Be mindful, as I mentioned, about context switching as well, and just be in control of your time as much as humanly possible. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to give you my information in just a moment, but I'm always happy to get different feedback. And if you disagree for any reason, you're welcome to let me know what you do instead in order to build in time for failure. I'm always curious about what other people's methods are. I spend a lot of time by myself, as you can see, and I try to do that by design. But I also do really care about networking and understanding and meeting other people who are doing something similar or something completely different, and how we can share ideas about how we approach different things and learn from each other. With that being said, I'm just going to share a few announcements. This show is once a week for free. So every week I do the Wednesday build and talk about different topics like this, or just whatever I want to, because it's my show. And I also have a new issue of Code Word Hex out every Tuesday. That one's a little bit more on the technical side. So I will actually build something and then talk about how I built that thing. I like to do a lot of things about how different platforms fit together. So for example, yesterday was Thinkific plus Gabble, and how you can use those two tools together. I've also done things on Canva and sort of like how you can create or reverse engineer things like Duolingo and create a language tool using Gabble, things like that. So that's a really fun one if you want to check that out. It's free as well every Tuesday. For courses, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have courses at Chromium Academy on software and Airtable. There's a certification course now on Go Full Page. And then there's going to be more to come. I have lots of ideas about what we can do. There's also a Gabble certification course, which we're currently updating with the recent rebrand from Documate to Gabble. But those are available now. Also, I've mentioned a lot today the fellowship program for the law students in legal tech, Access to Justice Fellowship, which is one of my favorite programs because we're really teaching them how to create harmonized business models and how all of these different tools work together in synchronicity rather than teaching them very separately from each other. So I really love this model and how we're putting this together. As I mentioned, we've already built a lot of really cool things together. There's rolling admissions for this particular fellowship until March 28th. So if you're interested in applying and joining us, it is free and you're eligible to apply if you're a current law student, a recent grad within 1 year of your graduation date, or a participant of a legal incubator program, such as those put on by law schools or bar associations. You can join our community for free by signing up for any of our courses for our Chromium Academy, and you'll be automatically added to Chromium Global. And then if you would like to join us in the Slack group for Gabble, we are a really active community where everyone's super helpful and really cares about each other's success. So thank you so much for your time and attention, for those of you that are here with me live, as well as those watching the recording. Our next session of the Wednesday build will be on the 15th of March at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be talking about bravery and vulnerability in business, where success lies in liberating your individuality. I really love this idea because I feel like it's so important for each of us to be within our genius zones and to be ourselves. And there's something unique that you offer the world that nobody else can offer. So really tapping into that will lead to success in business. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or via email. You can reach me at brittany@chromam.pro. Any inquiries related to Gavel's law school program, you can just email me at brittany@gavel.io. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.